Give me a minute, I've got a lot going on here. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, members of the proposition, opposition, adjudicators, judges, convener, and ladies and gentlemen of the House. As you know, the motion we're debating today is that this House will abolish the minimum wage. Along with Denny, I'm opposing this motion for St. Jarlath's due. As the last speaker of the debate, it's my duty to sum up everything. I also want to talk about some things myself. I'd like to start with some rebuttal. One of the speakers, I'm sorry, terrible names, I won't remember. One of the speakers basically took a load of facts and brought his own conclusion from it. He said, in 1996, there was no minimum wage, everything was great. Now, we have a minimum wage, everything's crap. You cannot draw your own conclusion from that, because in 1996, we were in a massive period of growth. Now we've gone bust. The recession is causing this, and not the minimum wage. The way I see it, this debate has been mainly compromised with two themes, the economic side and the social side. Nothing. Oh, I'm spinning. The proposition has said, which doesn't make sense because they obviously haven't done their numbers, they've said that when the minimum wage is abolished and everyone is earning more or less and the wages go down, then the cost of living will go down. That would be mighty, but that's not the case. 60,000 people out of, I think it's over 1.5 million, will get their wages slashed. That is not enough to cause a massive deflation in markets. All the medium to high earners will still be getting big juicy salaries, and that's what keeps the price of goods so high. They also talked about how having minimum wage causes economic stagnation. But in fact, the reverse is true, because economic stagnation happens in local and national economies when luxury products can't be bought because there's no expendable income, which is exactly what abolishing the minimum wage will do. It's totally counterproductive, because our government wants us to spend to revitalise the economy. As my colleague Denny said, psychologically there's a need to work, even if it's for terrible money. Studies have shown that people who work have more confidence and they feel like they're living more fulfilling lives. That's lovely, except when they don't have money to pay the rent or the electricity bill or for food. Then what we have is thousands of extremely fulfilled homeless people. It's all well and good to say that people will work for whatever you give them. Yes, sir.
Sir, both you and first off, we're talking about this whole idea of people's finances being exploited. But then you say if they're being exploited, they're going to go. You're kind of contradicting your arguments.
Yeah, that's another thing the proposition has developed. They have said on numerous occasions that sure, you can go on the dole, it won't harm the people. Everything comes back to the people. Money from the dole comes from the government, which we have to pay into. It's affecting the people. We're essentially paying for ourselves. No, thank you. It's all well and good to say that people will work for whatever you give them, but the fact is, this is a democracy, not a business. Talking about squeezing every penny and competitiveness is fine until you see the human cost. With any change of law or legislation, what needs to be the primary concern is, will this benefit the people? On numerous occasions and in many ways, we have shown that the answer to that is a resounding no. We have shown that by... No, thank you. As I said, they basically said that welfare will pick up the slack. But which wouldn't be right, because without they basically said that without the minimum wage, I misplaced that. Di spoke about the pressure that this would put on low-income families, but let's think about it on a national level. The impossibility of abolishing the minimum wage is so because it puts so much extra pressure on social welfare. And we can't put extra pressure on social welfare because, as we said, it's coming out of our pocket. No, thank you. Soon, with 60,000 people of the population, no, thank you, in dire need of extra income, family income supplement, which is actually a thing, will be necessary to increase wages. This will just bring people back up to the wage they be on if they're on minimum wage. So basically, what will happen is people will still be paid the same, except that the money will cost the government, which will come from tax. It's a hideous cycle, and it's totally unnecessary. And as Dahi said, with reference to morbidly obese cats, the difference between rich and poor will become greater. Abolishing the minimum wage promotes an almost Thatcherite economy, with the rich becoming richer because they don't have to pay so much for labour, and the poor getting poorer because they're not getting paid as much for labour. Social welfare has been a big theme in this. They're saying that minimum wage is a barrier to young businesses starting up. But, seeing as they're so fond of social welfare, There's a plethora of social welfare grants for young businesses, so that can benefit everyone. Because we want businesses to start up in Ireland. That's good for the economy. I want you to look at a simple situation. 2 people apply for a job. One of them is a father of 3 who owns a modest home in the suburbs of Dublin and was recently made redundant from his job as a tree cutter. There's no forest in Ireland anyway, he understands the job. The other applicant is a 17-year-old layabout who lives in his parents' attic and wants to earn money to customise his car, because frankly, it just isn't as loud as it could be. The 17-year-old boy racer gets the job because he's willing to work for €4 an hour, whereas the father of 3 needs at least €7 an hour to live. No, thank you. What's happened here is that people who don't really need the money and are willing to work for less are getting jobs over people who very much do need the money to live. No thanks. That's a big problem in society. It's also encouraging employers to start hiring under 18-year-olds because they can't leave them to go on the dole, as Dahi pointed out. We've talked about many things today. Most notably that the proposition would like to see that a lot of people who are very vulnerable would be harmed to stimulate our economy rather than a few very powerful people. We've also seen that we want to prevent exploitation of employees, whereas the proposition is saying exploitation is okay as long as it's happening to a lot of people, namely 60,000 people. As I said, we've heard a lot today, and there's so many different things we've heard that basically things just get misconstrued and people form their own ideas and things that aren't based on fact. Are we saying that the minimum wage is perfect? Of course we're not. What we're saying is that minimum wage, what we're saying is the abolition of minimum wage is bad for people. What they're saying is that minimum wage is bad for business. That's 2 sides of the same coin. We're not saying that the minimum wage is perfect. Of course we're not. The alternative, however, is exploitation, and it's undemocratic. I hope you see sense, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you see logic. I hope you see we don't need a minimum wage. Thank you.
I would like to thank that speaker and indeed thank all of the speakers in this debate for what was an absolutely fantastic spectacle. So please give them all a round of applause. It's an extraordinary event. Now, we're going to have to call the judges to retire, so you guys will be going to the council chambers. Now, quick explanation of what's going to be happening next. Firstly, we'll be getting a wee speech from our guest chair here this evening. After that, we thank you for doing a few announcements, and then we'll be going off to our social venue, at which we will be getting the results announcement. So, without further ado, I'd like to call on our guest chair once more to give a wee address on this topic.
Thank you very much. I suppose first of all, thanks for the invitation today. The invitation didn't come directly to me. I'm a substitute from someone who fills in. So, for somebody who's supposed to be here for about a quarter of an hour, I was told initially, I should have learned never to trust a politician. I suppose first of all to say that the issue for debate today is a serious issue. It's very much one of those issues that lots of parties have different political viewpoints on. All the positions put forward today were very eloquently put. Very sound basis and facts around the debate. That the House would abolish the minimum wage. Now I suppose, as somebody who's worked in this city as an anti-poverty worker, quite clearly I would be totally opposed to the abolishment of the minimum wage. And I do so, I suppose, really in many respects along with my party, because we believe that abolishing the minimum wage actually allows free enterprise, the rich getting richer and the poor getting poorer. But let's look at some facts. Some people already addressed this in their inputs today, with 250,000 people currently broke after paying their bills. These are people who are currently working in the main. We have 735,000 people with as little as €70 a month left in what we call spending money. And in many respects, we see the demands on organisations like Vincent de Paul and other charities now bailing out workers and their families to keep their heads above water. We also know at this stage quite clearly that it's now at over 167 per litre of petrol. So for anybody going to work and anybody who's currently has the luxury of being in employment at the moment at a level, you don't have a great deal if you begin to abolish the minimum wage, because employers would certainly seek straight away to reduce their costs and drive down wages. The trade union movement itself would say quite clearly that it has not been good to abolish minimum wages. We've seen over the 70s and the 80s that not having a minimum wage has created problems with the widening of the gap and continuous areas of our country. The less well off have suffered hugely. I suppose really in many respects it's a debate which we're now probably gone past, because the current government has agreed that it will re-establish the standard minimum wage to what it was before the outgoing government decided to reduce it. There is wider issues, of course. The wider issues are the whole economy, where we are at this present time economically, and I suppose how we can fix what people have really, I suppose, brought down the house around us. How do we mend the trust, the confidence, and how do we get people back to work? 2.5 years ago, you could say quite clearly that if the government had brought in stimulus packages as opposed to bailing out banks, then we might have had a different outcome. We may not have had the IMF and the European Central Bank marching through our streets and now meeting us on a quarterly basis, telling us what we can do. The fair is before us, but again, it's about us taking control as opposed to being dictated to from other parties. We didn't all borrow the debt that now we're all saddled with, which is 85,000 per head at the moment, per person in this country. 85,000, in which in many respects, if we were to look and we were to reduce the minimum wage down, some people would never pay that back, not in their lifetime. So we would have perpetuating debt on families or their children's children. So from my party's perspective, we do believe there's a better way of working this out. We believe that you instill workers with a sense of pride. You also give people their worth in society, as opposed to, I suppose, rubbishing them to the sidelines of poverty or even below poverty. We don't want to see a society that is divided by classes, and we don't believe in underprivilege as much as the privilege. We want to see a fair and just society, and to do that we've got to move forward together, and we've got to be open towards a minimum wage set. And I believe that's the way forward. It's certainly the way forward. We've seen societies right across this world, the competing societies and markets that we're competing against in an open market society can easily outstrip us regardless with regards to the volume of populations they have. But it's about the quality of the work, it's about the education of our workforce, it's about investing into people as opposed to denigrating them down the ladder of the hierarchy. And I'd like to say thanks very much. Thanks to everybody for your contributions. Well done. I look forward to seeing it on Rock's reporting here or in the chambers of our local authorities. Well done, everybody. Thank you very much.